If you identify as an empath, hear this now. Someone is feeding on your light, not with fangs or claws, but with stories that sound like love, crises that feel like intimacy, and a hunger so practiced it passes for connection. This is not superstition. It is the psychology of the shadow, what Carl Jung warned about when he wrote that what we refuse to make conscious returns to rule us from the dark. Today, we drag it into the light. Jung noticed something most people miss. Empaths aren't. Born fragile, they're forged. The child who learned to read a room faster than anyone else, who could sense danger in a parent's sigh, predict an argument from a footstep, and regulate everyone's emotions before breakfast. That child became exquisitely attuned in order to survive. That gift kept you alive, and it's the very gift that makes you luminous enough to be hunted. Who hunts? Not obvious villains. Often they're the charming, broken, beautifully complicated people who seem to need you most. They don't say, "Give me your energy." They arrive with wounds that mirror your depth. They offer confessions that sound sacred. They cry with you. They mirror your soul. And without ever saying the words, they begin to feed. Here is the pattern Jung's work helps us name. First, the light recognition. Rooms have weather, and you are the sun. People who run on the electricity of other people's attention can feel your warmth from across a crowded space. They gravitate to the one who listens hardest, forgives fastest, and carries responsibility for everyone's mood. You know this moment. A glance that lingers, a confession too early, a story that locks your empathy into place. Next, the wound. Display. They don't start with demands, they start with pain. Trauma unfurls like a banner. Childhood scars, betrayals, losses, and you, with your cathedral-sized heart, open the door. Finally, you think, someone is letting me see the real them. And in a sense they are, but only the parts that hook your compassion. They mirror your depth while hiding their emptiness. Then, the empathy activation. Your mirror neurons hum like tuning forks. You feel their storm as if it were inside your own skin. They call during work hours with just one more emergency. They text to say only you understand. They tell you that your presence is medicine, that you are special, that no one else sees them like you do. And you begin to believe that being needed is the same as being loved. Finally, the depletion normalization. Exhaustion becomes proof of devotion. Brain fog is rebranded as heightened sensitivity. Your body's alarm bells, tight shoulders, leaden limbs, the ache behind your eyes, get dismissed as being dramatic. The story is rewritten so that your depletion means you're doing it right. If you've ever stumbled out of a conversation, feeling hollow and told yourself you were overreacting, remember this sentence. They were feeding on your light. Jung would call this a reversal of projection. You are not the one who is too much. Your intuition is not the problem. What's happening is the gaslight of the unconscious. Someone else's shadow persuading your consciousness to doubt your own signals. Everything in you says no, but the story insists your no is cruelty. Pause and scan your body. Think of the last person who left you drained. Did your breath shallow? Did your chest tighten? Did your mind go foggy? Your nervous system is wiser than the narrative. Your body keeps the receipts. There's a reason this dynamic is so sticky. For empaths, the same exquisitely tuned sensitivity that helped you survive in childhood, reading micro-expressions, absorbing unspoken moods, anticipating danger, becomes a beacon in adulthood. Jung didn't see this as moral failure. He saw an archetypal trap. The wounded healer meets the shadow devourer. The healer tries to fix what is not theirs to fix. The devourer learns to eat what is not theirs to generate. Let's put flesh and breath on these patterns. Sarah met David in a circle meant for healing. He spoke with a quiet gravity that sounded like depth. He told her about nights he couldn't get out of bed, a father who never hugged him, a soul that felt torn open by the world. Sarah felt chosen. At last, someone she could meet beyond. Small talk. Weeks became months, and subtle shifts crept in. Calls during her deadlines, hours of monologue labeled sharing. When she offered her own pain, it was folded into his. If she set a boundary, he said, "I'm just sensitive, I thought you got me." That was the moment the mask slipped, sensitivity as leverage. When Sarah named the pattern, "My empathy is not your fuel," David accused her of being cold. But beneath the accusation was something truer. His supply was ending. Masks protest when oxygen is removed. Michael's mother loved her son fiercely, and she made him responsible for that love. "If you don't pick up, who will I have?" she asked. "You know how dark my thoughts get." On holidays, the attention had to orbit her pain. If he visited, she clung. If he left, she wilted. When he began to leave his phone in another room, guilt mounted like a fever. Jung would recognize the devouring mother archetype here, not a villain but a parent whose unmet needs cannibalized the child's autonomy. Michael's step forward was not cruelty, it was differentiation. Love, he learned, is not the same as emotional labor on demand. Lisa's office had a storm cloud with a name. A colleague who arrived late, left early, and filled the middle with personal crises that became everyone else's emergency. "This place has no heart," the colleague said, simultaneously monopolizing hearts. Lisa, gifted at soothing, became the designated regulator. "You're the only one who understands," the colleague insisted. Jung would call this projection disguised as virtue, dysregulation reframed as depth. When Lisa stopped volunteering, as a sponge, she wasn't abandoning compassion. She was reclaiming her job description from roles she never agreed to. Notice the pattern. These dynamics escalate when you put the cup down. Jung understood why. What you no longer unconsciously provide must now be generated within. That is painful for the person who has outsourced it for years. So the shadow thrashes. In behavioral psychology, we call this an extinction burst. Surge of protests and manipulations that appear when old rewards are removed. In Jung's language, the shadow will do acrobatics to avoid consciousness. Here is what the acrobatics sound like. "After everything I've shared, you're going to abandon me? I thought you were more compassionate. If you set that boundary, I don't know what I'll do. You've changed. This isn't who you really are." Read them again, hear the subtext. "Keep being what I need so I don't have to become what I'm capable of." Compassion hears pain. Clarity hears the demand inside the pain. Empaths, you are not fragile, you are bright, and brightness requires stewardship. Jung wrote of individuation, the lifelong task of becoming who you truly are rather than who the world needs you to be. Stewardship is individuation in action. It says, "My light is not infinite fuel for anyone who shows up with a story. My light is a sacred resource, and I am responsible for how I use it." To steward your light, you must understand the engine of this hunger. People who feed on others' energy are not cartoon villains. They are often people exiled from their own, feeling function. Somewhere along the line, their system learned that emotions were too much to bear or too risky to show. So a strategy formed: seek intensity from outside rather than cultivate depth inside. Borrow warmth instead of making fire. It works until it doesn't. Because borrowed warmth always cools, and that's when they return for more. You cannot heal this pattern by hemorrhaging. You cannot love someone into wholeness by offering your essence as a substitute for their inner work. Even if you succeed at stabilizing them for a season, you will be training them to seek life outside themselves and training yourself to abandon the one person you are commanded to care for, yourself. So, what changes everything? Consciousness that moves from insight to practice. Consider a framework to guard your light without hardening your heart. Remember it as light, L. Learn to read energy honestly. Jung spoke of feeling-toned complexes, the way certain patterns carry a charge. Your body reads that charge before your mind writes a story. Track it. After calls, do you feel shattered or settled? After visits, do you sleep like a child or like a haunted house? Keep a log for a month. Notice who leaves you clear and who leaves you scattered. Your body is a lie detector politely waiting for you to ask it questions. Integrate your shadow. The empath's shadow is not cruelty. It's the addiction to being needed. It's the terrifying belief that usefulness equals worth. Ask yourself, what do I get from being the rescuer? What fear would surface if I stopped? Whose love did I learn to earn by making myself indispensable? You are not shaming yourself by asking. You are meeting the part of you that learned to survive by making a home out of self-erasure. Integration doesn't exile this part. It sits with it until it no longer drives the car. Guard your sacred energy. Protection is not selfishness. Protection is accurate math. You have a finite nervous system. Every hour spent processing someone else's unprocessed emotions is an hour you cannot devote to your own becoming. Start small and precise. A 5-minute delay before answering messages. A clear "I'm not available" for crisis calls during work hours. A request to schedule conversations rather than drop them like grenades. See what happens. Clarity isn't cruel, it's comprehensible. Honor your authentic nature. Empaths dim themselves for safety. You make yourself small so no one accuses you of shining. Ironically, dimming attracts the very people who feed, because suppressed light makes easy prey. Honoring your nature means telling the truth about your sensitivity as strength. It means trusting your intuition when it whispers no, even if your story screams be nice. It means choosing relationships that mirror your wholeness, not your wounds. Transform trauma into wisdom. What kept you alive as a child isn't meant to run your adult life. You can feel without fusing. You can care without caretaking. You can sit beside someone's pain without climbing into their skin. Wisdom is what happens when empathy matures. You stop absorbing and start witnessing. You stop rescuing and start respecting the dignity of another's path. As you practice, expect turbulence. When your light is no longer a public utility, those accustomed to free power will pound on the door. Crises will multiply. Accusations will sharpen. Promises will bloom overnight. This is not evidence that you are cruel. This is evidence that the pattern is losing its grip. Stay steady. Never negotiate boundaries in the middle of a storm. Breathe. Return to your body. Recommit in the morning. Let's widen the lens from tactics to identity. Jung's work points to a deeper truth. The goal of life is not to be admired for your capacity to endure depletion. The goal is to become a self, integrated, radiant, free. This is why saying no to emotional vampirism feels like a spiritual act. It is. It's an altar you build to the part of you that belongs only to you. To make this arc concrete, let's name the 3 stages of empath development. Stage 1. The unconscious empath. You feel everything, understand little, and blame yourself for all of it. You're a radio that picks up every station at once. You believe your exhaustion proves your love. You attract energy parasites because you mistake emergency for intimacy. Your work here is education and observation. Learn the pattern. Start a boundary so small it feels silly. Let your nervous system experience what safety feels like. Stage 2. The conscious empath. You recognize your design. You begin to say no without apology. You learn to delay your yes until your body says yes too. You start sorting feelings into 2 baskets, mine and not mine. You still wobble. Guilt shows up wearing the costume of compassion. Sometimes you slip back into overgiving because an old story whispers, if you don't, they won't stay. That's okay. You are practicing a new way of belonging to yourself. Stage 3. The sovereign empath. You own your sensitivity as gift, not burden. You sense the difference between authenticity and performance. You draw people who reciprocate your care because your boundaries have become your filter. You can sit with suffering without becoming its scaffolding. You don't audition for love. You offer presence where it is honored, and you walk away where it is harvested. Between these stages stands a door most empaths fear to open, the courage to disappoint. You will disappoint those who mistake access for love. You will disappoint the versions of yourself who once equated martyrdom with meaning. You will disappoint systems that profit from your silence. Walk through anyway. The door opens onto a quiet room where you can finally hear your own life. Let's return to the feeding cycle and break it line by line because the mind loves a map. When the light recognition begins, remember, attention is not intimacy. Charisma is not character. Someone sensing your glow does not mean they have earned your warmth. If you feel overseen, like someone has X-rayed your soul in the first hour, slow down. Depth without time is intensity, not trust. When the wound display arrives, practice compassion with edges. You can say, I hear the pain, and I am not the person to process this right now. You can grieve with someone without becoming their grief plan. You can hold a hand without holding the whole history. When the empathy activation kicks in, ask one question internally. If I did not feel responsible for this person's mood, what would I choose now? Let your choice emerge from that clean ground. When the depletion normalization whispers, exhaustion means devotion, answer with a new proverb. Clarity is compassion. Clarity about your limits prevents the slow, resentful giving that curdles every relationship into obligation. Now the shadows acrobatics. Name them as they arise. Guilt that says you owe me, shame that says you are heartless, fear that says you will end up alone, false urgency that says if you don't answer now, disaster, identity attack that says you've changed. Write these on paper. When they appear, you'll recognize them like old sales pitches. You don't have to buy. Will there be losses? Yes. Jung said the problems of life are outgrown, not solved. Outgrowing the need to be needed means certain ties unravel. Relationships built on your depletion will not survive your sovereignty. This is not failure, this is compost. From it grows a life that does not require you to abandon yourself to be loved. What replaces the old orbit? Presence that doesn't perform, love that doesn't harvest, reciprocity that doesn't tally, people who celebrate your no because it makes your yes honest, people whose crises aren't weapons, people who can sit in quiet without demanding your nervous system as their entertainment. You might wonder, if I protect my light, will I dim it? The opposite. When you stop bleeding energy, you glow steadier. Courage returns in simple ways. You sleep through the night. Your mind stops sprinting. You laugh without scanning the room. You create not from obligation, but from overflow. Your life turns from triage to garden. Let's test these truths with more lived scenes. A friend you've known for years calls to catch up. Within minutes, they're narrating a fresh disaster. You listen, you empathize, and when your inner tide goes out, you say, I care. I'm at capacity for heavy conversation today. Let's find another time. They get quiet, then they say, You're different. You smile and answer, I'm becoming myself. The line goes still. Sometimes that stillness is the sound of a pattern ending. At a family gathering, the relative who triangulates everyone corners you with whispers. You feel the familiar adrenaline, the old training that says, hold it together. You inhale, let your feet find the floor and reply, I'm not available for conversations that make me choose sides. They scoff. Later that night, you realize you've gone home with your energy intact. That feeling is not selfishness. That feeling is adulthood. In love, a partner spirals and asks you to be the anchor every time. Once you said yes by reflex. Now you put a hand on your heart and say, I'm here. I won't swallow the ocean for you. I'll sit beside you until your breath returns. The difference is subtle and seismic. You still love, but you refuse the merger. That refusal is what invites the other to meet their own depths. A final scene. You alone in the morning light, hand on the table, pulse steady. You whisper a sentence you wish someone had given you as a child. My energy is sacred. Not because you're better, because you are responsible. Because you know what happens when you forget. Because you have people to love from a place that doesn't disappear you. Where does this leave those who have fed on your light? With their work, which is the only place where work can ever be done. When you stop being their battery, they will rage, bargain, charm, punish, plead. Some will learn. They will meet their own emptiness and begin to kindle a flame that is theirs. Others will search for a new sun. You cannot decide for them. You can decide for you, and you will not become hard. You will become discerning. You will tell the rarest truth in a culture addicted to endurance. I choose relationships where my nervous system can rest. You will practice the craft of offering compassion that does not sabotage clarity. You will learn to tell the difference between a person in honest pain and a person using pain as power. If your heart trembles at the thought of being disliked, let it tremble. Sovereignty is not the absence of fear, it is the placement of loyalty. Place your loyalty with the life in you that is trying to bloom. replace it with the part of you that refused to die when you were young and now asks to do more than survive. Place it with the light that is yours to tend. Remember the opening sentence, someone is feeding on your light. Now replace it with the ending truth, you are the guardian of your light. Every no to vampirism is a yes to evolution. Every boundary is an act of love, for you first, and by extension for everyone who will meet the real you instead of the emptied you. Every time you refuse to dim to be digestible, you give others permission to kindle their own flame. If you've been punished for setting boundaries, you've touched the right nerve. If people treated you differently when you stopped being their regulator, they sensed your awakening before you announced it. Let that sentence be an anthem, not an accusation. Sing it under your breath when you're tempted to apologize for existing. Before we close, trace the arc one last time so your mind has a scaffold and your body has a script. The bait is your brilliance. The hook is your history. The line is their story of need. The cost is your exhaustion. The tell is your body. The cure is your consciousness. The shift begins with small no's. The storm is the extinction burst. The calm is sovereignty. The measure of a healthy bond is reciprocity, not intensity. The mark of real love is rest, not rescue. The miracle is that you can keep your heart open without letting your life be eaten. If you recognize yourself in these words, you are not broken, you are bright. If you're ready to set one boundary this week to protect your light, name it out loud. Your words matter. Your nervous system is listening. And if you ever forget, return to this truth. Your empathy is not a currency to spend on surviving other people's shadows. It's a gift to be shared consciously, in relationships where both souls get brighter. The world does not need another depleted healer. It needs you, wide awake, warm, and wonderfully unwilling to be harvested.